Numbers 2, 3, and 4 go down on upset Saturday. That's Michigan, it's Clemson, it's Washington. Ohio State jumps from 5 to 2, and it was pretty logical, the order of the finish for the college football playoff rankings this past Tuesday, with Alabama leading the way. But a lot of interesting scenarios in mind, and if you follow college football, you've probably heard this one play out. If the Buckeyes win out and Penn State does as well, then you've got a two-way tie, and Penn State wins the tiebreaker. They move on to the Big Ten championship game. If Michigan wins out, obviously they are the Big Ten Eastern Division representative. So let's talk a messy situation here, Brandon. The first scenario has Ohio State winning out, finishing 11-1. We would think, having just defeated the third-ranked team in the country, that they would keep their number 2 position going into the Big Ten championship weekend. But Penn State goes, and let's say they defeat a top 10 Wisconsin team in the Big Ten championship game. That's an interesting call for the committee.
Yeah, there are a lot of hot takes going on out there about, if the Buckeyes win out, they're going to make it, or there's some people that, feel like if the Buckeyes win out, they will not make it, based on them not going to a conference championship game. I think at this point, no one really knows. If you ask anyone, I think they will say that they feel like Ohio State is one of the top 4 teams in the nation. The question is, does the committee feel that way? We've had 2 years of this college football playoffs. Both years, the committee has kind of put some sort of emphasis on the conference championships, which may hurt the Buckeyes. I know a member of the committee came out today and said that if, one of the teams that they feel like is the top 4 is not a conference championship, champion, they would still put them in. But, based off last year, you look at last year with the Buckeyes, they were the defending champs. They returned most of their players from the championship team. They lost one game late early against Michigan State on a last-second field goal. Many people thought they were a top 4 team. After that Michigan win, Ohio State was ranked number 6. You take a team like Stanford, who was ranked number 7. Stanford went on to play in a conference championship. Mind that, Stanford had 2 losses. They had lost to Northwestern. They had lost to Notre Dame. They win the Pac-12 championship, and they jump the Buckeyes in the standings. So, even though it didn't jump them into the playoffs, it still was them jumping the Buckeyes in the college football playoff standings. Even though people thought the Buckeyes were one of the top 4 teams, they only had 1 loss, and Stanford had 2 losses. But that Pac-12 championship is what made them jump. So, going into that Pac-12 championship week, Stanford was ranked behind the Buckeyes. That Pac-12 championship win had them jump the Buckeyes. So, we don't know if that'll happen this year. You and I spoke beforehand too, in 2014, how TCU was ranked number 3. Buckeyes win a Big Ten championship. They jump TCU. So we just don't know what is going to happen this year. I just feel like no one can really be confident in what the committee is going to do. We just got to watch these final 2 weeks and see what all plays out. If it was anything like last weekend, it's going to be a fun 2 weeks for all of us. So
Brandon, for me, if Penn State wins the Big Ten championship, they're 11-2. Ohio State's 11-1. That's the only criteria the Buckeyes have over the Nittany Lions, is the better overall record. But Penn State won the head-to-head. They are the Big Ten champions. I don't think it's much of a discussion. I think Penn State gets the nod. It's just a matter of what happens elsewhere in the country that could possibly get the Buckeyes a second bid for the Big Ten. On the other hand, if Wisconsin wins the Big Ten championship and the Buckeyes have the head-to-head and the better overall record, I would give the nod to Ohio State over Wisconsin, again, just based on the head-to-head, despite Wisconsin winning the conference championship. And I can't imagine that Oklahoma, having lost to Ohio State head-to-head at home by 3 touchdowns and having 2 losses, could beat out the Buckeyes. The committee, to a certain extent, has done everything logically. I can't fault the way they have teams placed. I've gone through it with a pretty fine-tooth comb, and I have very few. I have 1 or 2 teams position one spot differently, but they have positioned themselves to make a very difficult call, because Ohio State could be number 2, having just upped its resume even more by defeating number 3. And how do you drop them 3 spots to number 5 after championship weekend? It could get really messy, and it could be really fun for debate.
Yes, it could. And I mean, and you were talking about the Sooners. I mean, it looks like the Sooners are going to win the Big 12. What if USC comes out and wins the Pac-12, or, a team like that has 3 losses? Like that takes out 2 conference champs right there that you can't see jumping the Buckeyes at all. A 3-loss USC team, as good as they are playing right now, is not going to jump the Buckeyes. You cannot justify the Sooners jumping the Buckeyes too, when the Sooners, got manhandled by the Buckeyes. So, it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. I mean, it's college football. That's why we all love it so much.
Yeah, Ohio State's basically in a very similar situation as last year when they lost the wrong game. They should have lost to Rutgers or somebody, but they lost to Michigan State, lost the head-to-head. And on championship weekend, they were sitting there while most people considered them one of the 4 best teams in the country, and they were sitting there rooting for chaos to ensue to vault them into the top 4. They're in better position this year from a ranking standpoint, but in regards to conference championships being played out, again, they will have to break the mold to make the college football playoff, most likely, unless something tragic happens to Penn State in the next 2 weeks, and maybe Sparty pulls off an upset in week whatever it is, 14.
Yeah,
all right. Maybe. Brandon Zimmerman from the Buckeye Battle Cry. We join you each and every Wednesday night. We're going to make this a regular thing with Brandon. We appreciate the time, Brandon.
All right. Thank you very much, Mark.